Let's talk supply chain. So welcome to the show, Juliette.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. This is a very exciting time in the industry, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you about myself and about what is happening out there.
Yes, I am so excited to have you here. I mean, your career journey and achievements so far are such an inspiring example to the next generation of supply chain professionals. Your contribution to boards and commitment to giving back is amazing. And honestly, I don't know how you find the time, how you even found the time today for this interview, but I'm really glad that you did. I'm really looking forward to finding out more. So let's just dive right in. You have a degree in electrical engineering, and following that, you really pursued the business world and were chosen for all sorts of programs. Fast track executive leadership development at Columbia, high potential leadership executive program at Harvard. That is truly amazing. How did you find yourself on that path? And where did that incredible drive and ambition come from at such a young age?
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for asking that and for being so generous in terms of how you're presenting all of this relative to my background. To start off, I was made in Romania, and I was raised by two Holocaust survivors,
Wow.
which in itself gives me sort of the growth and the ambition to succeed,
Mm-hmm.
just because of their background and the way I was raised. I came to the United States as a young person. I lived in New York, Queens. When I came here at the age of 12, I went to high school here. And like you said, I went to college here. And I had the fortune to get educated in engineering at a great university, as you mentioned, at Cornell, where I paid my way through by doing research, by working at the physics library, and working at what they call their synchrotron, which is an electron positron accelerator, which kind of got me involved into the engineering space. All of which gave me so much independence and the opportunity to do hard work, and get to where I am today.
Amazing, amazing. And I could just imagine, I mean, the resiliency that you grew up in, like your household was, that was a really, really tough time for a lot of people. And I can only imagine what that was like for you at such a young age. But what you pulled from them was the hard work and the resiliency, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, they were some incredible people. They have passed. I'll talk about it a little bit later, probably, when I get a chance to talk about my parents. But they were a
Mhm.
huge influence,
Mhm.
and they were hard workers, right? So they came back from surviving some atrocities, and
Yeah.
then they emigrated from a communist world to the land of the free.
Yeah.
Um, and and seeing that gave me a lot of energy and a lot of ambition for sure.
I love that. I can't wait to find out more. But how did you find yourself in the worlds of supply chain and technology after that? What was your experience in those early years? Because you were at Nokia in the 90s, and what a time to be in tech.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of this sort of kind of happened, but because of my parents' sort of vision and need for stability, they were always directing me to work for like a stable, big company, where I can spend the rest of my life at, because that's how
Right.
things were in those days. And so I started out in Western Electric, which is the manufacturing arm of AT&T, and I started in a place called Reading, Pennsylvania. Not everybody heard of this place. It's the land of Amish
Okay.
country.
Hmm.
And I spent 22 years in manufacturing, in research and development, in
Wow.
product management, in strategy, and finally in services. And because I spent such a long time in such a huge company, which was truly a $90 billion company with roughly 1.5 million employees, the opportunities were there to move jobs every 3 years. And I did, and I took advantage of that,
Hmm.
while I was traveling the world, and I just learned a tremendous amount. And during this time, I had the fortune to work for a very significant figure in the marketplace. I was the chief of staff for Carly Fiorina. She was the first Fortune 50 female in United States.
Wow.
She was the CEO of Hewlett Packard. But at the time, she was working at AT&T, and I was her chief of staff. Later on, I did a spinoff with her from AT&T to Lucent. Lucent was a spinoff. And I also led Y2K under her leadership. Knowing her and working for her, I really have learned that I can do anything I set my mind to. She took me away from what you call the bits and bytes of technology and kind of helped me see the bigger picture, take a look at sort of the business benefits of engineering. And I really, moved more into strategy and more into things that I never thought I'm going to go to. And it kind of launched my career, honestly.
Amazing. I love to hear that. And that was from another woman, right? I think
And that was from another woman, right? So if you look her up, I mean, she's pretty well known in the industry. And later on, she had a political career, which wasn't all that successful, but she was very successful being a CEO at HP. And I learned a tremendous amount from her.
I love hearing that. So then give us an overview of where your career kind of went from there. You've got a lot of achievements, you've got a lot of highlights. So talk to us about those, and maybe also let us know what you've been the most proud of up until, going to Genpro.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough question, but yet it's a very rich question, I think. From the times of AT&T, my career really elevated into new markets, new areas, new segments, such as financial services. I was at Merrill Lynch. I went to the pharmaceutical industry, which was at Pfizer. And after all of these Fortune 50 experiences, later on in my career, I decided to move more into the food and beverage world. Okay. And more into the smaller companies, roughly around $200 million, 100 people. So I worked at World Finer Foods, which was prior to my current role, and my current role is in logistics at Genpro. It's interesting. After spending so many years at AT&T, and you mentioned it was Nokia because they actually got sold to Alcatel, and then they got sold to Nokia. Got it. That was actually Lucent, the spinoff. It was kind of interesting to kind of expand outside the telecom industry. So the telecom industry was actually shrinking in 2004. Mm-hmm. And I had to make a decision, and I decided to really kind of expand and go into more information technology. And then it was interesting because sometimes, you kind of ask, sometimes, is your path very direct or very, segmented and zigzag? And while I really planned out my career at a very young age, I had a manager who actually asked me to kind of lay out my career. And I did for the next 5 years. But oftentimes you plan things and other things happen.
Yes.
And they happen for, in my opinion, looking back, for the best.
Right.
So, after I left the Fortune 50 world, I wanted to work closer to my home. I wanted not to travel into Manhattan, which was, at the Lincoln Tunnel at 6 a.m. and home at 7 p.m., raising long 2 days. Kids. Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate that I had an opportunity at a smaller company, which was World Finer Foods. And at World Finer Foods, because it was a smaller company, I was able to elevate myself into a role of CIO. Mm-hmm. And 6 months into my role there, I expanded into supply chain. And this is kind of important to note that sometimes opportunities come to you, and it is important to do things that maybe others don't want, or maybe they give you something you haven't done in the past. Like supply chain is not something I did in the past, but it was a gap. I was offered the opportunity, and I picked it up. So here I was at a mid-sized company with 2 executive roles, reporting to the board of directors and the CEO. And I had an opportunity to do some really, really amazing things. And I took this company from a loss to a profit, turned them around, and eventually, we increased the top line, and we sold the company. So,
Amazing.
just to sort of address, what are the achievements or things that I'm proud of and what am I most proud of? There are a lot of firsts that I had the opportunity in doing.
Mm-hmm.
One of those back at AT&T was to connect the United States to the world through undersea cable communication. And I was actually involved in that. And that's a big
Wow.
deal,
That is a big deal.
Today, we just talk to everyone on the phone, but at those times that wasn't the case. And to connect the two continents was really amazing.
Mm.
And then part of that project, I had a patent in aligning a single mode fiber to a photodiode, which probably doesn't mean much to you, but maybe some of the people listening, it may mean something. It was a big deal at that time, and I felt real proud of that.
Awesome.
Then I had an opportunity to build a telephone factory in another country, which was in Brazil, in a trade-free zone called Manaus. I was part of introducing the very first wireless technology in the United States. I owned one of the very first car cell phones, which was very cool. I still have it. It's really interesting to look at. And then I spent time in doing mergers and acquisitions. So at Merrill Lynch, I did an integration of about 5 banks into Merrill Lynch.
Mm.
At Pfizer, I integrated Wyeth to Pfizer in the technology space. And I did some divestitures, which was the baby formula to Nestle's, and the animal health business went to Zoetis. That's when Zoetis was created. I'm sure you heard of the company, one of the biggest animal health companies. So as you can see, I did many things. But the question is, what are you most proud of?
Mm-hmm.
And to be very honest with you, I am most proud of the children that I created and what I'm
Yes.
leaving behind.
Awesome.
However, in terms of work, at World Final Foods, we did a turnaround, but we did a turnaround without reducing the roles.
Mm-hmm.
So while we did have some resource changes, we did not reduce the roles, so people were able to stay. So here we are, a company that's not doing well. We had to do a turnaround. We had to save a lot of money, but yet we kept the people, and that to me is a big deal because it's very people oriented.
There is so much to be proud of in
Thank you.
all of those achievements. And I'm glad that you talked about the professional and the personal, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you and I grew up in a world where they were separated. You didn't talk about personal in your professional life. And today I think we can break that barrier. And I think that it's very important that we think about, our personal and our professional lives, because we bring our best selves that way when we're in our personal environment and our professional environment, if we're able to be holistically all of ourselves. And so I'm glad that you brought up, being a mother and your children as one of the achievements, but also talking about something that was professional. And you can have lots of proud moments in your career, and you've just shown us that. Now, you're currently the CIO of Genpro, which is a logistics service company. I want to ask you about supply chain tech in just a second, but you previously said that this was a gap for you. You'd never done supply chain before. And too often I hear that women aren't raising their hands for roles because they don't think that they have enough experience. And here you are saying you had no experience. You had this opportunity come to you. What was going through your head that you were like, you know what? Let's do it. I can do this. Because I'd like to be able to share that kind of mindset with some of the other women in this industry so that they can go for it too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great question. And, I'm a true believer in really jumping in and doing things that you don't think you can do. And as I mentioned to you earlier, working for Carly was one of those moments where I never ever imagined that I could do strategy because I was an engineer. I was a bits and bytes and numbers person. And she said, listen, strategy is very logical. It's not something up in the ether. And she kind of gave me an opportunity to do things that I really didn't think I could.
Right.
So later on, as I grew older, and I had this opportunity at World Finer Foods to pick up supply chain, I raised my hand. Actually, I didn't raise my hand. I was asked to do it. And I very quickly said yes. And I went home and I thought, oh, I'm really nervous about this. But to be honest, it's not rocket science. It's moving product from one place to another, optimizing your inventory, looking at your warehouse. They're very basic, logical things. And I think that in order for women or people to succeed, you have to stretch yourself beyond the comfort level. And that's the only way you can move ahead. If you're always going to be in your comfort zone, there's always going to be a reason why you can't do something because you haven't studied it or you haven't learned it or you haven't done it. So you just have to do it. It's a very scary thing. But as soon as you jump in it and you do it, all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is not such a big deal,
Yeah.
And then you have so much benefits later on and you can start connecting things. You're doing all these different kinds of things. And then you kind of step away and say, these are all connected. Like all of this is connected. Supply chain is nothing more than really good technology, to be honest with you, so you're applying it in a particular area, but it truly is technology, efficiency, scalability, capabilities. So yeah.
And I would say people are a really important part of that too, because I feel like the people in supply chain are a very unique bunch of people and problem solvers, so many different things. And so I think people are also really important to that supply chain because you've got so many different moving parts. But going back to what you were saying about technology, because I have a lot of really interesting conversations around the possibilities of tech, right? But there's also limitations like budgets, team buy-in, integration. What's your take on all of this? And how has supply chain tech changed over the course of your career?
I mean, good questions. So I think technology is, in my opinion, an enabler. When I worked in the telecom industry, technology was the business, but in supply chain, it's an enabler. And I think in many industries, it's an enabler. I think technology is always going to change and grow. And I think that there is definitely a fear whenever technology takes over our day-to-day work. But I'm a true believer that it's very important to work smarter than harder.
Yeah.
And I think of technology as an enabler to work smarter. So I don't feel like technology is taking away my job. I think that technology is elevating the role that I play, where I bring in predictive analytics or looking at how to improve your overall business as opposed to, typing in things and using all these different platforms. And, I just think technology between AI, machine learning, people are truly afraid of that, but I really look at it as an enabler. And, one of the things that I think is happening in the industry, and actually it was just a recent article in the Wall Street Journal about this, and this has to do with workplace singularity. So, wouldn't it be nice if we could just have everything in one place? In the logistics world, I see that as the transportation management system. So, we work with carriers, we work with warehouses, we work with transportation management systems. Wouldn't it be nice if we can just go to one place and have everything that we need to have pricing, have carriers, have service levels, have, all of those things in one place. And that's sort of how I imagine things. And, I just think technology is not going to stop. It's going to move forward. And I think we have to embrace it as opposed to fight it and figure out how to use it in the best way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you lead the technology committee at Targatek, which I think you've described as a hyper collaboration startup.
Yes.
What do you mean by hyper collaboration? I mean, you know, the sign behind me, collaboration is the future of business. You're speaking my language.
Correct.
Why is that approach increasingly important when it comes to business? And what exactly does it mean?
So one of my roles is I'm the board director in a newly launched company called Targatek.
Mhm.
And if anybody's interested in that, of course, they can go to targatek.com and learn more about it, or just reach out to me. This is a platform where you can imagine that you open up your computer, and today you're on Windows, but tomorrow imagine that you're on this platform and everything is integrated in that platform. So your Zoom and your team is integrated, your Outlook is integrated, your projects, your action items that roll up all the way to your strategy. So everybody could see how their specific action item rolls up into the company's strategy. It helps leaders lead. Um, so imagine, having that, and not just having that, but not typing, but talking to it. So
Mm.
imagine talking to it. Imagine having a device like your cell phone with an app in your pocket where you could actually see, if I go back to logistics at GenPro, you can actually see my customer could actually tell where is their truck, at what point, what is their service level, what is their inventory level. Like imagine that you can see all that, and that you can talk to it and say, hey, I want to meet with John Smith tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and that meeting gets put on your calendar. Or
Mm.
imagine driving to work and talking to your dashboard and telling your dashboard, um, please set up a meeting with Sarah Barnes Humphrey at 9 o'clock tomorrow to discuss inventory.
Right.
And all that can be done through what I call hyper collaboration platform that Targatek offers.
Mm.
I also feel that these capabilities, if I could build them in a transportation management system, which we're doing, will differentiate Genpro from any other broker.
Mm.
And I really feel that while Genpro is not a technology company, it's a logistics broker. The differentiator between broker A and broker B would be the technology, the visibility of their carriers on how they could see where they're at any one point, service levels, analytics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's what I think will make us different. So if anyone is interested in logistics, email me and we can talk.
I love that. And I like the hyper collaboration. You're like
Yeah.
really speaking my language in the fact that I've got to log into all these different places to see all sorts of different things that I need to do, like tasks and stuff like that. And we're starting to get connected in a few different ways, but you're connecting outside platforms to each other. And so I can definitely see the benefit from that, in business in general, and then also in the logistics side. But let's talk about something that's a little bit more personal to you, because you're also on the board of the National Kidney Foundation, which I know is very important to you. What do you want to share about what the organization does, and perhaps maybe give the listeners an indication of how they might be able to support you?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for asking that. This is an important mission, I think. It's been in the news many times. So obviously, the National Kidney Foundation is supporting kidney donors and kidney receivers. And this is a big medical problem of millions of people. And what people don't realize is that we all have two kidneys, and we can live perfectly well on one with absolutely no limitations whatsoever.
Hmm.
And this is important to me because both me and my husband are kidney donors. I wanted to donate. I obviously I couldn't because they found a huge tumor on my kidney,
Oh.
and they removed it, but it was through a donation process
Mm-hmm.
that they found it. So actually, I saved my life by being
Wow.
a giver, if you will.
Yeah.
And I also have close family members that were kidney receivers, which is why this foundation is particularly important to me.
Hmm.
But I do think that it helps millions of people. And, you can read through the evolution of what happened with, kidney recipients and kidney donors. how we do chains, like, you don't have to match anymore your blood type and your other things. You can actually donate to one person whose donor can donate to another person. And I think the longest chain of that was like 50. So there were
Wow.
50 operations at one time, by flying around kidneys that match the different people. Very, very interesting. There's a
Wow.
software that does that and so on. Anyway, I'm highly supportive of this. I'm on the board of directors, and really my role is to not only help them, obviously collect money to support research, but also to bring awareness to companies. And like I said, I think it's a really good cause. And again, I provide it for you if you want to add it to our podcast. The kidney donation and the kidney organization. We have a big golf outing on May 15th. If anybody wants to join, they're welcome to. And yeah, I just feel like I'm giving back a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I also have a nonprofit, and I think it's important, again, going back to the personal and the professional side of somebody is, what causes and organizations are they passionate about? Are they giving back to? Are they spending time with? And really giving a voice to those organizations and talking more about what those organizations do, because we only learn by listening to conversations like this and opening up about what you're passionate about and why, and it could resonate with somebody else. And so I appreciate you for sharing that and for giving back through that foundation. Now, you've spent pretty much your whole career in a male dominated space. So what has your experience been like as a woman and also a mother? Because you mentioned earlier you have 2 children that you've raised alongside this enviable career that you've built. So talk to us a bit about that.
Thank you so much again for these nice words of recognition. Yeah, I worked in a male dominating world. But honestly, I always consider that as part of life. I never looked at it in that way. Like I said, I came from a communist world where people typically are considered equal. So when I came to the United States, for me, there wasn't a separation between men and women. And so I considered it as normal and part of life. However, as I progressed through my career, I have realized how much underpaid I was. In my 22 years at AT&T, I had huge roles, had a lot of people working for me, great opportunities, like I mentioned earlier, but I really didn't know how little I was being paid until I actually left. When you stay with a company as long as 22 years, you get, 2 to 3% increases. When you get a promotion, maybe you get 4%, but you never get that step function raise. And I didn't quite realize that until much later. But I was always a believer of, if you work hard, keep yourself focused, get things done, be responsible, things come. And I think that they do, but sometimes you have to help it, right? You have to, and today, today the information is out there. You have Glassdoor, you have a lot of information which I didn't have in the past.
Right.
So I'm just kind of thinking through, like, how did that really affect me? But like I mentioned, my mom was a biochemist. She passed away at 94 last year. My father was a physicist. We were in the sciences. I never really differentiated. But like I said, as I grew older, I did realize that there were differences. And now I'm a big proponent on supporting women and honestly supporting young people. I don't want to distinguish. I want to help the young people really figure out how to do things right and doing the right things. To me, that's super important. And I do believe that if you do it well, it will come. I do believe in that.
And you're a member of Extraordinary Women on Boards, right? And I think that also plays into what you just talked about and how you're supportive of other women in industry. So talk to us about that organization. What are they doing to increase the presence and influence of women on boards? Because I just saw something on Instagram, I think it was, we now have women of color that's outweighing the number of men named John on boards. Crazy stat.
Love that. Love that. Things have evolved in the last 25 years, 30 years, a lot. And, now when I sit around the boardroom or around a meeting, I don't really notice anymore. In the past, I would say, oh, there's another woman. Or today, I don't really notice that because there are women, there are people of color, there are all kinds of cultures. So I kind of like that. And what I like the most, Sarah, that I wanted to say is I enjoy, if you remember in the old days, men did business in the bathroom, they chatted stuff.
On
Well,
the
now
golf course, in
women
the
do
bathroom.
on the golf course, right? But now women can go to the bathroom and chat, and we do. We strategize.
It has happened.
So what EWAB does, I joined this group. It's a group of extremely powerful women. I tell you, I really feel like this big when I talk to all of them because they're such achievers. These are women that already on boards. So they only take women that are already on boards. But it's an organization where we are truly like sisterhood, if you will. We really, really help each other. When you're on a board, you have risk, you have governance, you have all kinds of challenges. And it's really good to go to a place where you can, call someone and say, hey, have you had this experience? How do you deal with this? And I gotta tell you, the women in this group are so giving. They're so honest. It's really humbling. And I love to see that because I believe in collaboration. I believe in an open book. I believe in, never buying a product or doing something without talking to someone that already has done it, this is an organization that really supports and helps us do that, particularly to board roles. So I am really, Lisa and Lisa are the two women that are managing this. They came out of Goldman Sachs. They did it as a hobby. I think 20 years ago, they did it for free for about 5 or 6 years. And they said, hey, we can do a business from this. Right. Now they're charging for it, but very well worth it because we have good speakers and we really collaborate a lot.
I will have to look into it. You've gotten me, wanting to learn more. Yes. And I love that. And I love to hear that there's organizations out there that are helping.
And Sarah, if you are a board member of a for-profit, I'm happy to make the introductions if you're interested.
Okay, awesome. We'll talk after our conversation here. Now,
absolutely.
I want to ask you about advice. So what advice would you have for women looking to come into the industry, maybe for leaders, and also maybe for working mothers? We didn't really tap into what it was like being a working mother through your career. So give us some advice on a couple of different levels.
So just addressing, being a career and a wife and a mother, it is absolutely super challenging.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to figure out how to build a support system around you. That is very, very important. A support system with a babysitter, a nanny, a daycare, some of your colleagues at work. I mean, there were moments in my life when I had a child that was very ill and I needed help. And people at work helped me. And so the work didn't stop. We got stuff done. But in the meantime, people around me, in my community. So it's important as a mother to figure out how do you create an environment around you that can support you with your kids. And so I was fortunate I was able to manage that. And now my kids are 28 and 30, and thank God they're doing fantastic. As far as advice, there's quite a lot that I would want to emphasize. First of all, never give up and never give up your beliefs and your wants. Those are important. As long as they're not crazy, like they have to be reachable goals, right? So you know, if you're 12 years old and say, I want to be a president, that's nice. But like you have to really just have goals that are achievable, right? Because coming up with achievable goals gives you the satisfaction that you achieved them. And you have to
Right.
really take it one step at a time. You can't project out 25 years, right? That's a little too difficult. But don't give up the things that you love.
Mhm.
Um, think out of the box. Think out of the norm. You know, you don't have to go with the crowd and with the norm. You can have a different point of view,
Mhm.
and you can think about that and you can bring that up, because sometimes if you bring up very different point of views, which is why having a culturally mixed group is really important. So in the hiring process, I tend not to hire people like me. I tend to hire people that are different from me, which is uncomfortable, but you have to do it
Yep.
because you get that different perspective. So thinking out of the box. Um, I would say, you know, believe in yourself, but understand that you have to invest time and energy. Like things don't just come,
Mhm.
right? You have to help it.
Yep.
And you have to do things that are maybe not conventional, maybe not in a direct straight line. Put yourself out there. Put
Mhm.
yourself out there, because by being out there, things happen. And then you can pick up on those things. Volunteer to do things. Volunteer, do things outside your comfort level. We talked about that before.
Mhm.
Also, don't be afraid of change. Change is inevitable. The only thing that is constant is change.
Mhm.
And until you learn to embrace it, you can have a difficult time. So try to embrace those change. Change is typically good. May not look like that at the beginning, but when you look back, you say, hey, I learned something from that.
Mhm.
And always keep in mind that learning is a constant, and little nuggets, little golden threads, little things can really, you know, change your perspective. And so keep an open mind. And last thing, a door that closes is a door that also opens. And so those are my overall advice, I guess.
That is such amazing advice. I mean, I can just hear the pens on the paper or the people taking the notes on their phone of these little nuggets that you're giving to us, Juliette. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I think this is fascinating, but we do have to wind it down. So my last question to you is, what is next in your journey? What are you excited
Yeah.
about? What is something that's coming down the line for you?
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. I'm not really sure. I
Okay.
have a view, I have a vision.
Uh-huh.
So I think I have a lot of work to do here at Genpro. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm very excited about what we're doing here. We're scaling the company, we're digitizing, we're transforming. Very exciting times. So I see myself here for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see myself giving back in my vast experience. And the best way to do that is through board work.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my little advertisement, depending on who's listening. If you guys are interested in a great board member, I am looking to do one more board assignment for a large public or private company. But I think that doing that, so I always, you know, I always loved to teach. That's something that I always enjoyed, and I had my own private tutoring business, which I really didn't talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, I like to give back. So I think that board work in my future is gonna stay.
Yay. And advocating for yourself. That was just an amazing
Yes.
example about advocating for yourself and taking the opportunity to do that. Now, that was such a fascinating conversation. And we feature a lot of different women on the show at different stages of their careers and with different paths to success. But if you're a young person or student of supply chain, you're wondering what could be possible for you, I mean, look no further than Juliette Samson. She has navigated male dominated spaces with power and grace, forged an incredible career in leadership, tech, and supply chain, and is passionate about giving back to the community, using her platform to lend a voice to the next generation of women. She's a wonderful example, and I hope you all feel as inspired as I do. Juliette, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Sarah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really hope that this helps. Even if it helps one person, that's great. I am always available if anybody wants to reach out. But thank you so much for this opportunity, Sarah.